BDO South Africa is a professional audit, tax, and advisory firm that's part of a global network of firms in over 160 countries. We have offices in 7 locations nationally with more than 2,400 qualified staff ready to assist our clients. Welcome to our Clarity Unscripted podcast. Here, you will find transparent content that's both insightful and unfiltered. No holds barred, just pure clarity.
Welcome to another episode of Clarity Unscripted. Today, we've got another fantastic alumni. Excited to be with Mr. Mdabula, Melvin, who's actually a supply chain senior planner at Glencore. What even is that? I don't even know. Melvin will let us know. Welcome, Melvin.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
Awesome.
Melvin, what does a supply chain senior planner at Glencore do? Because that we have to get out of there off the bat.
Yeah, so you basically the guy that makes sure that the mine has enough products to keep running, producing copper and cobalt. So I'm responsible for the how much, by when should be on site, working with the process engineers. So all the forecasting of how much will be needed by when, completely under my control with the team.
Jeez, there we go. CASA planning what the mine needs, but we'll get to that later. Let's now go back and let's start right at the beginning. Who is Melvin? What are you about? And how did you land up at BDO to do your articles here?
Sure, that is a long story. Who is Melvin? A second degree black belt in karate, right?
I forgot to tell our viewers, this is a karate man, yeah.
Yeah, did my undergrad at UJ. Interesting story there through the undergrad. Attempted CTA full-time at UJ 4 times, unsuccessfully so.
Wait. You can't do it so quickly. You attempted CTA 4 times. Full-time.
Full-time.
And you actually went back the second time and third time.
And the fourth.
And fourth time.
And fourth time, yeah.
And I mean, that 4 times literally being in varsity, repeating CTA must have drained you.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think about the 4th attempt, people who were first year looking up to me, sitting at the library with my big books studying for CTA were now my classmates by the 4th attempt. So you can imagine. It was very draining, and the study loans were piling up. So at some point, I had to start working and consider studying part-time, and that's what happened.
Okay, so yeah. I know the entire story, but our viewers definitely don't. So please do carry on. Then what happened?
So I enrolled with UNISA and started my articles at BDO. Or luckily, there was good support there. They gave you sufficient study leave days, a bit of financial assistance on your studies. But once again, I fell into the same habit. So maybe let me go back to high school, undergrad, and then varsity quickly. So I'm the kind of guy that relies on short-term memory, right? So all my life, ever since I can remember, for me, studying is basically looking at your books like this and the night before.
You've got it.
And I've got it. So when people say you must revise before you write, I don't know what that is, because 1 hour before we write, I'm covering new stuff. But I bet you if they asked that in the exam, I'll get 100%.
Jeez.
So I was an A student throughout high school, passed like that. And I remember one teacher actually said, I rely a lot on my short-term memory. It might be a problem one day, right? Get through to undergrad, cruised my undergrad degree, no issues. I had an attention deficit disorder in class, couldn't pay attention. So I'd actually leave class, go play pool, get study notes and slides from my friends, and still do very well. I thought that was going to cut it.
Until CTA arrived.
Yeah, I thought that was going to cut it, but that's just not enough for CTA. I don't care how smart you are.
Jeez.
So come CTA, my first attempt, I had to write out all the conditioning for the last 12 years of school plus 3 years of undergrad. So that's like 15 years of me just studying the night before and doing very well. So that's when I learned CTA is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you have to be consistent. You can't wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to run 50 kilometers just
It's
out of
impossible.
the blue.
That's impossible.
You can say, I'm going to sprint. You'll probably maybe sprint 1 kilometer and you'll run out of breath. And that's basically what happened to me. And you know, they say insanity is
doing the same
doing
thing,
the same
over,
thing
over.
over and over, hoping for a different result.
Yeah.
And the next 3 years was just me keeping at it, trying to say, I know I'm smart. I've had people with lower marks and averages passing this thing, but they were more consistent. They studied every day, and I wasn't. I was still trying to study the night before. You know, I was in denial about my strategy because it's worked for me for the last 15 years. Why is it not working now? The CTA was just a different beast.
So you then get into articles, you join BDO, you have not passed your CTA, so they allowed you to join the firm,
Yes,
even though you had not passed your CTA.
Yeah.
What then happens? You finish your articles within the 3-year time. What happens in terms of you passing CTA from there?
Okay. So that's interesting because one of the conditions of BDO taking me as an article clerk without CTA was that I must continue studying, right? So I enrolled for CTA with UNISA part-time. So I was now working and studying, a more difficult task. And the first year that I attempted it with UNISA part-time was one of the most heartbreaking because that's the closest I ever got. I think my overall average was around 56. All the other subjects were over 60, and then I got 46 for management accounting. Got a sub for that, got another 46.
Jeez.
And failed it. But I'm glad I failed that year. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Had I passed that year, I would have been too arrogant because it would have proved that I didn't need to study consistently because I was still pulling the same stance while waking, and only maybe now instead of the night before, maybe studying 3 days before.
So it was going to keep on creating this beast, this habit of I can do things short term and last minute, and I'll still get the results. And I think, you know, when we look at your career now, what you're actually doing, your job, you cannot do last minute planning for a mine as big as a Glencore.
Yeah, 100%. So I went through the 3 years. The next 2 years only got worse. The marks kept getting worse and worse. But what I did notice, tax and auditing, I'd passed those. It got to a point where I was comfortable with what I knew. I'd go write a tax exam without the legislation. So actually, ever since then, I've not failed.
Because you were doing it every day. I mean, it's part and parcel of your audit, and that's what you're doing on a daily basis. Yeah. So you'd say that was a playing ground or teaching ground for you?
Oh, no,
for
definitely.
Actually studying.
Auditing helped. I mean, I think in exams, if I wasn't sure of a substantive procedure, just think and imagine I made an audit and think, what are the procedures that I would do to try and reduce the risk? So yeah, that definitely helped.
Brilliant. Yeah. And when do you then pass?
We'll get to that.
We still have 3 years, but I still haven't heard of it.
Remember now,
the 6th attempt.
No, 7th.
7th attempt.
4 full time, 3 attempts at UNISA. We're now on attempt 7. And we're now at the end of articles. This is now end of 2014.
You still haven't written ITC, you haven't written APC.
Yeah.
You've got this stumbling
block.
Degree. What is happening in your mind? What are you thinking?
So I go back to when I was in high school. I took a book of my dad's library called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, when I read that book, there were a lot of principles that I learned that I didn't know in 15 years' time would come in very handy. And one of the principles in that book is that sometimes we get so busy that we don't see we're not even effective at what we're doing. You're trying to chop down a tree with a blunt axe.
You haven't sharpened your axe.
Yeah, so sometimes you must take time out to sharpen the axe. And that's what I said to myself. I'm like, I've been studying CTA 7 straight years.
Sure.
No breakthrough. I need to take time out, do some introspection. And most people said, if you take a break from CTA,
it's done. You'll never get
never coming back. But I knew I had to come back.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why I always wanted to come back, even though it seemed like it was slipping me around so many times. It's because I always ask myself one question. Have I given it my best effort? And in all those 7 years, yes, it was a lot of repetition, but The answer, honestly, was always no. Why? Because with everything, they'll tell you there's certain rules you need to abide by. And with us at UJ, for example, they'll tell you you need to spend a minimum of 8 hours a day studying this thing just to pass. Have I ever done 8 hours a day in those 7 years? No. Heck, I hadn't even done 2 hours a day. So I knew I hadn't given it
So
my
you had
best
not
try.
actually given it a full on. And I mean,
Yeah.
with a person like you who's a double black belt, there's certain lessons, there's certain behaviors in karate that you need to adhere to. So did you tap into that to say, for me to be a double black belt, there's hard work that I put in. I don't just wake up and become a double black belt. Did you tap into that kind of philosophy?
Eventually, when I got it right, that's actually what had happened, even when we go to cover the board exam portion. So basically, I just got to a point where when I decided to go back, before we get there, when I decided to go back and study, I was actually creating more obstacles for myself, creating a less conducive environment for someone to pass CTA. What do I mean by this? This is the time I got engaged and decided I'm getting married.
Geez, so you're adding layers now.
Yeah, this is the time I said I'm going to go back and study. And I mean, I said my fiance at the time was now my wife. And I said, unless I do this thing and complete it, you will never be with a man who's complete. I won't feel complete until this is done. Because it wasn't a capability thing for me. It was actually a discipline thing. I need to get myself to a point where I'm disciplined enough to at least put in the minimum requirement to stand a chance to pass. So then there I then decided to enroll with Monash at the time. And that was hefty. I mean, we're moving from UNISA, which was about 15 grand a year, to Monash, which was about 75 grand a year.
And that's when they were with CA Connect.
Yes, the first time, that's when they were with CA Connect.
Yeah.
That is correct. So I approached ABSA for a study loan, and they were very helpful. I mean, I got a study loan and they said, we'll pay for everything you need, just give us a quotation. So I got the quotation for the books, quotation for the fees, and they gave me a loan for that at Prime.
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
So that definitely helped. And I was working as a management accountant at Score Metals Group at the time. So full-time demand. So I didn't have study leave days or anything like that. So that was now the 8th attempt, right? But after a 2-year break of not studying, right? Because I hadn't studied for 2 years, the CA Connect Monash collaboration then said, we'll put you on a 2-year program.
As opposed to a 1-year program.
As opposed to a 1-year.
You've actually now, there's a lot that's changed. I mean, there's a lot of regulations have changed. Yeah.
Exactly. But they said, if your average is more than 40 by mid-year, you'll still stand a chance to write final exams, and you can still do it within a year. I did meet the 40
by half year.
By half year, right? So I could still do it within that year. Wrote the exams once again, passed auditing and
taxation,
right? Now there's a big shift. CA Connect is leaving. Monash is going to run its own program with its own lectures. And that's when the game changed for me. Because one of the lectures that was coming for financial reporting was Anton van Wyk. Now,
who was actually at Wits at one point. I think he lectured me tax at a point.
Yeah, as fate would have it, the first time I attempted CTA in 2008 at UJ, Anton was one of the lectures.
Wow.
And you'll remember earlier I said I have attention deficiency when it comes to classes. But with Anton's classes,
you would listen.
I can sit 2 hours straight. I won't flinch, right? So that happened. I'm like, okay, cool. Anton is coming. I've had experience with Anton, so I'm going to register again. I'm going to give it another shot. And this time, you know what? I'm going to put in the hours. Like, friends would call me on my first attempt at Monash on weekends. Like, do you want to go out? Go ahead.
And you'd be available.
I'd be like, yeah, I'm available. Let's do that. The second time, now this was the last time, and this is when I knew things were completely different. I'm now married. The discipline is there. At some point, I'd stopped going to karate. So like you said earlier, so I've now gone back to karate. We're focusing, we're training hard, we're working on the discipline. So the one thing that I learned is that the stronger the body, the stronger the mind. And the stronger the mind, the stronger the body. So it's an upward spiral. And you can physically and emotionally feel it when you're writing your exams. Like when you're doing exercising, any exercise, the moment you feel you want to give up, it becomes a mental battle. It's not a, you tell
not the body,
you
the
tell
mind.
your mind going on. And once you do that and your mind overcomes that, your body overcomes that, you'll see when you're writing exams, sometimes you get to a point you're like, I want to give up. But because of all the physical labor that you've done before, your body also takes us like, no, we're not giving up. This is easy. So we had a slogan in karate which says, train hard, fight easy.
Sure.
So you do all the hardest training, you put in all the effort whilst you're still training, even on days when you don't feel like it. They'll tell you champions are made on days when they don't feel like training, they put in their hardest work. And that's basically what I then took and applied in my studies.
Would you then say the training ground you got at BDO in that 3 year of article has actually created, you know, the kind of leader you are? Because you're definitely a leader. You're now working in a space that CAs would not even think of. You're completely out of the CA space. You're working in a space that's completely different. SCM is completely different. Would you say that training ground was a platform for you? And what did you learn in your article years to come across this way?
No, 100%. You see, with the exposure to the different clients, one of the greatest qualities that's helping me where I am now is the ability to adapt to any environment, right? So at BDO, you had exposure and a lot of responsibilities with clients and different managers, different personalities. So you had to adapt. And some of them were my mentors, people like Stanley Pangetti, for example. You know, they were very instrumental in the kind of person and character that I have today.
So Melvin, I mean, you talk about this character and we've heard your story. When do you pass? I still haven't heard. At the 9th attempt, I then pass. When is the passing coming?
Okay, so we come to the 9th attempt, and from day one, when we wrote our March test, the results come out. I'm in the top 10 in 3 out of the 4 subjects, right?
Sure.
So I now start to put in the minimum hours and I can see the benefits. And we get to close to final exams. We've written all the tests, and I can attest that in all the subjects except management accounting, I've at least placed in the top 10 at least once.
That's amazing.
Right? But now my strategy was also different. I knew I had no issues with tax and auditing. And I'm not advising anyone to use this strategy. So I didn't attend any classes for those. I just go right.
Jeez.
Right.
So you didn't study?
I'd look at question papers and do that. And what I do, especially with auditing and tax, is if I missed something in the proposed solution, what I would do is I'd go back to the question paper and try to look
where did you miss
the question was this triggered. Why did I miss this? Where was it triggered?
Yeah.
And that actually helped me. Right. So we get to the final exams. I passed 2 once again.
Jeez.
Auditing and tax. And going into the exams for financial reporting, I was actually in the top 10.
Jeez.
But I made a mistake of leaving out cash flow statements consolidated in preparation for my exams, which actually counted for about 50% of the paper.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how I ended up getting a sub. And I said to myself, my back is against the wall. It's now or never. If it means I have to go to the office the whole weekend and stay there for 10 hours a day, I'm doing it. I have to pass. So I had a management accounting sub and a financial reporting sub. Right. I've never studied that hard in my life. I went in to write, and for the first time, you know, you'll never finish an accounting paper, you'll never finish a management reporting paper. But because even physically I was prepared, I've been training, my body was used to it. For the first time, I stuck to the time per section, and I finished the papers for those subs.
And it's critical. I mean, the time allocation, and I always say this to any student, it's not about finishing the paper, it's actually about the quality you do. So if you get to every single question, the time is up, did you score the marks?
Yeah.
You know, there's no point in you running at 100%, but you actually don't reach the destination. It doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
So did you then pass?
Yes, I then passed. But so the day of the results, actually for the sub results to come out, there were some technical issues. So it was supposed to come out on a Friday night, right? So I then took my wife to a restaurant. I said, I don't want to be sober when this comes out. Have a few drinks, logged in to check, and the marks were not out yet. There was some technical issues. Went home, actually didn't see the marks. I went to sleep. When I woke up, the wife had to go work Saturday morning. She was driving. I went downstairs, logged in. First, I checked financial reporting because I felt I did very well in that paper because going in, I was actually in the top 10 with my year mark.
Yep.
And turns out I passed. I was like, okay, I just need to see what happened with management accounting. Turned out I passed.
Wow.
It was a very emotional
That is
and
amazing.
surreal realization that it's finally done. I called my wife same time. She was driving. She stopped on the side of the road. I could hear her crying because she felt like she
Wow.
was with me throughout this journey.
And I guess that's what CTA is. And a lot of people, have tried it. And your story is testament to it can be done.
100%.
At the same time, it's also the difficulty that comes with it. The fact that you had to effectively do it 9 times and get the result and not give up because you actually wanted that CASA behind your name.
I know, yeah.
And when you then get to board 1 and 2, is that a simple pass or is the story continuing?
So it's a bit of both, all right? With board 1, and once again, honorable mention to Anton van Veek. Once I got my results, messaged him, and I said, listen, my journey started with you in 2008 at UJ. I've now passed this thing. It's so surreal. And he said to me, Melvin, well done, first and foremost, but your best attempt at passing ITC is your first attempt. So start studying now, right?
And that happens in January. You've got a December period. Can you really study in December?
Yeah. That gave me a sense of agency. And like you're saying, I was working full time. So I didn't, unlike the other trainees, I didn't have time where they give you the gen off. I still had to work full time. So my strategy had to be different, which meant I had to stay after work at the office from 5 up until 10. But I could only do that every second day because the next day I was too tired. So that's the strategy I used. And I stuck to the time pay allocated section came ITC.
Critical.
And I got that easy out of the way first attempt, 2019. And then I said, no, you know what? I think I'm good now. Let's do board 2
in the same year.
In the same year, right? So we do the board courses. I passed that easily. And it's time to write the APC, the final.
And that's changed now because that's not the old one. We're talking the APC that's actually more business, what you're actually doing at work.
Yeah.
It's a different approach altogether.
Different approach altogether. And then I made the mistake of, you'll know that the specs that come out from the different groups before the exam come out in the pre-release period. So I made the mistake of relying on those specs more than I relied on myself, right? And if you find yourself writing that exam and every 30 minutes you're opening the pad to try and find something and force it to be applicable, you
got a problem, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, Melvin, your story is absolutely remarkable. I mean, to talk about the tenacity, the grit, the resilience that you've had. I mean, when you now look at the job that you're currently doing, do you feel that that's actually added to the person you are today?
No, 100%. Going back to Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he always said, achieving your dreams is not about what you get at the end of the finish line. So it's not about what you get. It's about who you become. And I've seen that firsthand. I'm a much better person for having gone through this journey. And sometimes when you're going through these things, you think the whole world is against you. You don't see the bigger picture. And if you ask me now, if you could flip a coin and we could go into an alternate timeline where I pass this thing and qualify in record time first time, would I take it? And the answer is no. I wouldn't change.
Definitely anything. Wouldn't take it even if I say you pass that second attempt?
No, I wouldn't take it because we change everything.
Correct. Correct.
If it wasn't for this bumped me into a whole different path, I wouldn't be working where I'm working right now. Great culture, great environment, a lot of potential to grow in the business as well. And also, I wouldn't have met my wife because I would have been in a different place at a different time by the time we met. So I wouldn't change it.
Amazing. And when we now get into the crux of, you're a chartered accountant, but you're doing something that's completely opposite.
Yeah.
How did that happen? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah. So that's the nice thing about being a CA, is that it doesn't limit you to what field or industry you can work in. For me, it's basically the key that can open any door in any industry, in any field, because you're a critical thinker, you're an analytical thinker. And I got to a point where I was just tired of management reporting, doing financial statements, focusing on the past and reporting on that. I felt I could add more value, and that's why I'm where I am now, where I can, add value in terms of having an impact on what happens in the future, how to better control that,
So you've got a crystal ball. I presume that you know exactly how much you're going to need in terms of tonnage. How do you actually do it?
No, 100%. So it's funny you should say that, because my boss will always say that, I'm the guy on the Titanic with the telescope sitting on the, top bunker looking ahead. And I'm shouting to everyone that, guys, we are not okay. And they're saying, no, no, we're okay. Everything is smooth. I'm like, there's an iceberg coming
Wow.
in 400 miles. So I'm that guy. I look 3 months ahead and I say, there's going to be a problem in 3 months' time. We need to act now. Start turning now, or we're going to hit that iceberg.
Jeez, that must be a lot of responsibility. I mean, Melvin, your stories, as I said, absolutely one of the most inspiring stories. And I think, what would you lastly close off with to future CAs who probably still doing CTA, probably doing their first time in RTC? What is your message to your future CA? Might not have been on the 8th attempt or 7th attempt, but that is feeling down at this moment, thinking, geez, will I ever pass this thing?
Yeah, so 100%. Yeah, no one needs to go through the route that I did. It's just bad habit that I needed to get out of. So quickly to wrap up, the year I passed APC, 2020 COVID year, with the lowest pass rate thus far.
Yep.
And that's actually the year that
Wow.
that I passed. So look, to everyone out there, if you feel like you're struggling, the mere fact that you've qualified to be admitted to do CTA means you've definitely have the capacity and the intelligence to pass this thing. So the capability is not the issue. If you're struggling, you need to look at, are you putting in the bare minimum? You need to look at your exam technique. And I mean, perseverance is about bending without breaking. So you always need to have that bigger picture in mind. Right?
Absolutely remarkable. Perseverance is about bending without breaking. Clarity Unscripted. Thank you.